Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Institute for Personal Development, Kriya Yoga Ashram, where total consciousness is the new frontier.
Kriya Yoga is union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices to initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of the Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing pretty good today. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good today. Thanks for asking. And we want to thank you all for tuning in. Today on the Voice of Yoga, we have dedicated 12 shows to discussing the 12 signs of the Zodiac as a map leading to spiritual understanding. Each week focuses on the respective sign as an archetype used in the process of an individual becoming divine. Listen this week as we explain the function of Pisces as the revelation of the one divine mind. These shows will explore why divine law cannot function in your experience if you are not conscious of its presence. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. We are talking consciousness. Join the Kriya Yoga Spiritual Advance to get the light in your soul and experience the peace that passes understanding. So, Swami, can you explain to us why you decided to do this particular series and what you would expect our listeners to get out of it?
We decided that we wanted to have some sort of template or schematic or some sort of way of cataloging apotheosis, the process of the human becoming divine. And the Zodiac just seems to be the thing that has been around probably longer than anything else. So we decided to delve into it and using the fixed stars more as opposed to the movement of the celestial bodies, the planets, because what we're really trying to do is get a stronghold on the changeless state of being, the function of the divine mind and how that works. And so what I'm hoping that people get out of this is that they're able to start to, as we have been saying, forsake human thinking for divine knowing. That the concept that we talked about last week, to know the truth that will make you free. And to really start to understand that the changeless state of being, the presence of spirit, is really the foundation of creation. And it is that which is invisible and intangible, which is 180 degrees from the way that most of us are approaching our lives, because we're relying on the testimony of our five senses. And so what we've learned is that that's actually the error. That's what was called the sin, this belief in matter. And we're really trying to come out of that and start to see the benefits that come when you actually rely on the sustaining infinite.
And so the title of our show for today is 12 Signs of Spiritual Truth, Part 12. So this is obviously the last in the series, and it is going to be about Pisces. So what can you tell us about Pisces and how does it relate to the spiritual truth?
Pisces is mutable water. It's the last of the water signs. It's the last of the mutable signs. It's the final sign of the Zodiac. So it really represents fulfillment. It is completion. And the key phrase for Pisces is, I believe. That's something that we have been talking about since the inception of Institute for Personal Development, that belief is really what gives thought the power of intention. And what we've also found out is that most of our problems today are the direct result of our belief in them. But this thing called truth, what is spirit, is really principle. It is the self-existent. It is the one thing that does not rely on belief for power. And so everything that we really want to try and do with Pisces here is to reattune ourselves to that creative principle.
In the opening of the show, I said that we would explain the function of Pisces as the revelation of the one divine mind. And I really like that word revelation, because it's almost like this is something that we should become aware of. And once we do, bam, wonderful things are going to happen to us. So can you maybe dig down a little deeper on that?
Yeah, because that's exactly what it is, that it really isn't something that we have to do or make. It's really the recognition of the presence of the perfection of being, which is already here. Now, of course, what is perfect, harmonious, whole, and complete is not what's reporting in our five-sense mind. So we really have to think differently. And the term in the Bible was called repent. And it didn't mean to plead for forgiveness. It really meant to transform. It meant to turn to spirit. Yeah, and so all we really are trying to do is uncover this truth of our being. It's not something that we have to grow or make happen or take away anything. All we have to do is awaken to its presence.
So the one divine mind actually means God, if I'm understanding this correctly. So if that's the one divine mind, what mind am I operating from right now?
Right. And especially as you drill down with that simple statement, because if God is all, who am I? If God is all, who are you? And so that's what we're really starting to uncover. We have accepted this false sense of identity that really isn't the truth of our being. Those were the three modes of mortal thought that we want to try and come out of. Because what we're working with is a reality that is apart from the truth of our being. It is a reality that is apart from this one divine life. And if we accept that as real, then as we have been saying, that's the like attracts like. And we're stuck in the circuit because we now believe in matter. We believe in what is visible and tangible. And as long as we continue to believe, we'll perpetuate this regressive cycle, which is called the cycle of death and rebirth, and it's under the law of karma. It really thrives on the belief in something other than the one. So it has a belief in two powers. And that actually creates this hypnotic state we want to awaken from.
And I see that in your notes, you have a sentence, and I'm going to read it. It says, the knowledge that the life of God is you is the invitation to the spirit. I'd like to just talk a bit more about the life of God. So how can we go through our mortal lives and still reflect and have the knowledge of life of God?
Yeah, that's, I think, an interesting thing that you want to try and understand. The knowledge that the life of God is you. The connection is found in the thought unity that exists between divine mind and the real man. In order for us to activate that circuitry, we must know ourselves in the way that we are known by the Creator, which means that we have to step out of mortal physical identity and we have to assume spiritual identity. We have to let go of what is visible and tangible, what is invisible and tangible, and we have to embrace that which is invisible and intangible. And in doing that, see, that is how we create the invitation to Spirit. That's why in the Bible it says, ask in my name. So as long as we are a human pleading to this spiritual creator, we're not in the same circuitry. We don't have any connection to it. And it is our responsibility to be able to make that connection. Because the problem with the world is not God's love for humanity. The problem with the world is humanity's love for God. We don't know God aright. And so a lot of us are using a concept of what we think God is, of what we think Spirit is. And as a result, there's no connection. The invitation happens is when you really recognize that there's only one divine life. And if this life is everywhere and in everything, then who am I? And so the thought unity that we're talking about is, and I really like what Mary Baker Eddy says, that man is God's reflection. And what she means by the word reflection is mind considering its own content. That we are just an idea in divine mind. And so our existence depends upon this one divine life. And it's not just me, it's everything that appears in my senses.
I want to drill more on that statement because we did say that the knowledge that the life of God is you is the invitation to the Spirit. So I know you had just talked about the invitation. So to me, reading that and then listening to what you're saying, the invitation to me sounds like it's like the first step that's involved. But how deep does the knowledge have to be? Is it just enough that I have a human conscious awareness that the life of God is me, is you, is every living thing, is anything? Is that enough to open the door to this invitation to Spirit?
Yeah, you've got to be very careful with it because it isn't just a human thinking about God. In order for God to really function in your experience, you must assume spiritual identity. So that change has to go deep enough. What we're finding with Pisces, which is the revelation of Spirit in consciousness, and what we find is that Spirit is the dissolving force of this universe. And so as we start to assume spiritual identity, what actually happens is that a personal sense of self dissolves into an understanding of a greater whole. And so now you move from a personal sense of I into an impersonal sense of spiritual selfhood that lifts you out of the law of karma, the belief in two powers, and now puts you under the government of divine law, which is the law of eternal life, absolute love, absolute goodness.
Well, we've been talking a lot about truth with a capital T, and obviously the topic of today's show is 12 signs of spiritual truth. So if we have truth, then there must also be a lie. And what does that comprise of?
Yeah, and I really like what Herb Fitch says in Revelation of St. John, chapter 17:2. And he said, we must know the lie before we can know the truth. And the truth is that this is a spiritual universe. The truth is that there is only one divine life. And the lie is that I am separate from that. And so if I assume personal identity, I am in violation of that spiritual law. And then we experience this law of karma. And we are a mortal, finite being. But as we start to understand this truth, and we also, not just academically or intellectually, but we start to demonstrate it. We start to live out from it. And then we start to experience the benefits that come with it. Then you start to see that this isn't a sacrifice, but it is an upgrade.
Well, I think this is a good place to pause to hear a word from our sponsors. Listeners, we'll be back with you in just a few moments. Kriya Yoga Theory 2 is a unique and revolutionary practice and forum designed to facilitate the growth process in human development. Apotheosis is a real experience and has an evidence procedure. You cannot lead someone to permanent change by doing for them what they must do themselves. Personal accountability and responsibility are the foundation of Kriya Yoga Theory 2. You must be engaged and devoted. Prana power brings virtue to overcome fear, wisdom to overcome ignorance, purpose to overcome selfishness, enthusiasm to overcome laziness. Kriya Yoga is a path of action, knowledge, and devotion. These sessions are a celestial positioning system to guide the individual into union with the divine. For more information or to sign up for your next session online, go to www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste. Welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you're listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So, Swami, before the break, we were talking about the truth and the lie. So I guess my curiosity is talking about our everyday world. So if I'm driving in my car and I see a homeless person on the street, so the truth of my senses tells me this is a homeless person on the street, but that would be considered a lie. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah, and in fact, if you see a homeless person, you're in violation of the 9th commandment, not to bear false witness to your neighbor. And that's a real stretch for most of us, to actually deny the testimony of your senses and recognize that all that is there is this one divine life, perfect, harmonious, whole, complete, revealing itself as a homeless person. And your fidelity to your divine image is really the best thing that you can do for that person. Because the minute that you accept that there is a homeless person there, then you believe in something other than the one divine life. And it pulls you back into the cycle of death and rebirth and the law of karma. That's 180 degrees from the way we're socialized to think what is charitable and what is the right thing to do.
Now, should I also be cautious of thinking even situations are a lie, like this person being homeless? I mean, I'm assuming that this person has a terrible life, as well as somebody that may be coming from, orphans who come from broken homes and things like that. So is also recognizing situations could be a lie as well?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right there. And we have to really start to change how we're thinking. Start to really live out from the perfection of being and have fidelity to that, and start to rebuke the testimony of our senses. Because the minute we start to react to what is appearing in our senses, we believe that it's there. And it is our belief that actually gives it existence. And so we have to start to give up these false beliefs. And it's a real stretch initially when you first start to do that, especially with things like sickness and suffering and pain. And to actually say that if God is all and God is perfect, what is suffering? Who is suffering? And until we really get a strong hold on that, because God heals through man if man is governed by God. And so we can't get divine mind to take over the scientific government of our being if we continue to live out from the testimony of our senses. So there's a little bit of a learning curve that goes along with this. But once you start to master it, then you can actually start to heal these conditions in the same way that Jesus did. And most of this here is really backed by science, because as science has found that observation has effect on reality. And it is the observer that sets the measurement for what's called the collapse of the wave function. But now what science hasn't caught up with is what Mary Baker Eddy discovered, is that there are modes of thinking. And so until we come out of our three modes of mortal thought and start to think with divine mind, then we will continue to perpetuate this regressive cycle. But the minute that we can start to understand divine mind, the presence of the absolute, and we get out of the rational, then we can start to affect enormous changes just by observation.
I see. Well, I'd like to segue back a little bit and talk more about Pisces. In our notes, we have said that Pisces is called the house of undoing or spiritual knowing. And I'm not really exactly sure how to decipher the word undoing.
Yeah, spirit being the dissolving force of the universe, translating everything back to itself. Divine mind is the one principle of this universe, and in Pisces we learn to think with God as God. Spirit is the void or the nothing. And once you start to really understand that spirit is invisible and intangible, but it's not the nothing that we associate with as the absence of something. It is the void or the nothing out of which everything comes, because everything is just a different aspect of that one divine life, that indestructible principle.
So is undoing kind of like unraveling the mystery?
Well, what it does is it dissolves whatever it is that is before you, good, bad, or otherwise, back into spirit, which is spirit bringing itself back into itself. Which basically, I like what Joel Goldsmith calls it, nothingizing. That spirit nothingizes everything.
Okay, I think I understand that a little bit better now. Thank you. So in every show, we have spent some time to talk about Alice Bailey's The Labor of Hercules. So what can you tell us about Hercules and Pisces?
Yeah, Pisces, the labor that she associates with it is the capture of the red cattle of Geryon. In this final task is where Hercules gets the jewel of immortality, and he has overcome the human and he puts on the divine.
And so that's what you're talking about us trying to do.
Right, and that's exactly what apotheosis really is. And again, like we had said earlier, it's a revelation. It's not something that we change anything as a human. All we start to realize is that spiritual identity is the truth of our being. It's the fact of life. Everything else is just a belief and a concept, but it's not there. It's not real. It's just an image in the world mind, televising it into your individual consciousness.
And how did Hercules actually capture the red cattle?
Yeah, it's a whole series of events that takes place, but he kills the three-bodied owner of the cattle. He finds the shepherd. He doesn't kill the shepherd, but he has to kill the shepherd's two-headed dog. And basically what this whole symbolic story is about is that the red cattle are representative of the lower desires. Desire being something that is characteristics of humanity. And that's what we have been talking about, is whatever it is that we desire is really going to determine our fate. And so it is really optimal for us to desire, and I say this in quotes, nothing, which is the void or spirit. To desire spirit, to love God with your heart, your soul, and your mind is what really reveals the truth of our being.
Speaking for myself, I know I've been hearing you say that for years.
Right. And saying it and demonstrating it, I've learned, become two very different things.
And it's not enough just to have the right desire, but we've been talking a lot lately about serving God and having this constant prayerful action with God.
Right. And even the term to serve God has really changed dramatically for me, because before, serving God meant that I was doing something for God. But in reality, to serve God now means that the spirit within me now becomes what it is that I'm putting out into the world.
And I think we have a little bit of time left that you can talk to us about the constellations of Pisces as written by Alice Bailey.
Yeah, the first constellation that she associates with Pisces is the band, which is what is joining the two fishes. The second is Andromeda, the chained woman, and Cephas, the king.
And when we talk about Andromeda, the chained woman, there has to be some kind of symbolism behind that.
Yeah, the chained woman symbolizes matter harnessed.
And so is that what we do? We are harnessing matter, and that is something that we need to let go?
Well, what is meant by matter harnessed is to break the hypnotism of the belief in something other than the allness of God or spirit.
Okay, and then last question about the constellations. Cepheus, the king, what do we learn from that?
Yeah, the king represents spirit or the father aspect.
And then that is something that we look to join with.
Right, and we do that by doing the will of the Father.
Well, I think it's about that time we have to wrap up our program for this morning. So listeners, be sure to visit the website, www.ipdtransform.com. And again, once you're there are a lot of tools that you can access through the website to continue and further your spiritual developments. If you'd like to access some of our Blog Talk Radio shows, on the homepage, 3 quarters of the way down, you'll see a section entitled Swami Says Recent Posts, and you'll see a bunch there listed that you can click on. And also you can access Swami's free webinar, which is Wednesdays at noon, and that you'll find under online classes. So, Swami, do you have any other final thoughts about today's program?
Well, I would like to encourage everybody to break the circuit of the 3 modes of mortal thought so we can come out of the imitation false sense of identity and get our inspiration directly from the divine mind. And with that, I'll wish everybody a good day. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to The Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton, along with Swami Jayananda. We'll be signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.